2 million years ago, Earth was a place of raw power. Unpredictable, untamed, a world caught between extinction and evolution. Forests sprawled across the continents, volcanoes still smoked in the distance, and great rivers carved the land like slow-moving knives. In the heart of East Africa, the cradle of our species stirred. Here, among the shifting grasses and scattered woodlands, a new kind of creature began to emerge. Not yet human. Not fully beast. They walked upright, stood shoulder to shoulder with predators, and looked toward the horizon not just with instinct, but with thought. These were the Homo erectus. Tall, lean, and built to move, they were unlike anything the world had seen. Their eyes held memory. Their hands potential. They were hunters and scavengers. Toolmakers. Fire keepers. Survivors. This is their story. Not of kings and conquests, but of cracked bones, smoldering fires, and the quiet, desperate struggle to endure. A story told not in stone temples, but in footprints hardened into ancient mud. And within their tribe, within their moments of survival, lay the earliest sparks of us. The laughter of children echoed through the ravines. The grief of a lost elder lingered like smoke. They buried their dead. They shared food. They learned. And as the sun rose over the great Rift Valley, they walked, together, into the future. There were no farms, no homes, no safety beyond what hands could carry and feet could outrun. They lived in bands, small tribes of 10 to 30, scattered across shifting terrain. Some clung to the shade of forest edges. Others ventured into open grasslands where every movement could mean danger, or dinner. Their shelters were not built to last. Simple lean-tos of branches and brush, often abandoned when the herds moved on. They followed the rains, the migrations, the signs. Every day was a wager: risk the plains for meat, or scour the forest floor for roots and fruit. And yet, within that brutal rhythm, patterns began to form. At sunrise, the tribe would stir. No words. Just grunts, gestures, and quiet ritual. The fire, if it had survived the night, would be stoked first. Fire was life. It warmed the young, warded off predators, hardened the tips of spears. It was not yet understood, but it was respected. The gatherers would depart first, often women and older adolescents. They fanned out silently into the woods, eyes trained to recognize edible tubers, nuts, insect hives. Fingers calloused, legs strong, they moved with the forest. Every find mattered. The hunters, meanwhile, were fewer. They moved in pairs or threes, armed with sharpened sticks and crude axes. They watched the wind. They followed tracks. Sometimes they killed, more often they failed. But when they returned victorious, the entire band feasted, and the fire roared. They were not the top of the food chain, but they were rising. Each day they survived, they adapted. Their tools grew sharper. Their patterns more efficient. Children learned by watching, mimicking. Their play was practice for the hunt. And in this endless trial of survival, one truth held firm. They endured. For millions of years, life moved with the rhythm of tooth and claw. But Homo erectus introduced something new, a shift in power that would change the world forever. Stone. At first glance, it was simple. A flake of obsidian. A chunk of quartz cracked just right. But in their hands, stone became purpose. Function. Thought made visible. We call them Oldowan tools, the earliest evidence of human ingenuity. Crude, yes, but effective. A broken edge used to split meat from bone. A hammerstone used to crack open marrow-rich femurs. These were not random. They were chosen. Passed on. Improved. And they changed everything. With stone, Homo erectus could process food faster, defend against predators more efficiently, and expand their diets beyond what bare hands allowed. Shells, roots, nuts, flesh, all became accessible. What once took hours now took minutes. Efficiency meant survival. Survival meant space to grow. They didn't just hold the tools. They remembered them. When a child watched an elder chip a stone to a fine edge, it watched carefully. It mimicked. It practiced. One strike at a time, Generation by generation, knowledge traveled, not by language, but by imitation. And that was something no beast could match. This was the slow rise of culture. Not the kind written in books, but the kind etched in muscle memory and campfire smoke. It would be thousands of years before language, music, or art. But this was the seed. A brain growing not just larger, but smarter. Neural connections forming in real time, shaped by survival and innovation. Each spark of adaptation a step forward in the long, winding path to modern humanity. And so the forest floor became a workshop. The riverbank, a classroom. And in the hands of our ancestors, stone became the first voice of progress. It is hard to imagine now, in our world of glowing cities and endless warmth, what fire meant to early humans. 2 million years ago, fire was a rare and mystical thing, a force stolen from lightning, born in volcanic fury, or stumbled upon in the aftermath of a wildfire. To hold it, to keep it, was power beyond measure. For Homo erectus, fire changed everything. At first, it was fear. Flickering orange light in the darkness, strange heat that danced and roared. But fear gave way to curiosity. Curiosity gave way to reverence. And slowly, very slowly, it gave way to control. They didn't make it, not yet. But they kept it. When fire struck a tree, they watched. When it died, they mourned. And when they discovered that coals could be carried in bark bundles, that dry grass could coax an ember back to life, they became firekeepers. Always someone was assigned to the flames. A young one, fast and careful. Or an elder, too slow to hunt but wise enough to know fire's hunger. They fed it dry wood. They shielded it from rain. They guarded it through the night. Because if it died, they might not find it again for months, maybe years. But when it lived, everything changed. Meat became easier to chew, and safer to eat. Firelight drove predators away. Cold nights no longer meant death. And with flames crackling in the center of the camp, something even greater emerged. Time. Humans, for the first time, stayed awake after sunset. And in that dark envelope of hours, gathered around heat and light, they began to share. Not words, not yet, but sounds, gestures, stories of movement and memory. Around the fire, they became something more than scavengers. They became a tribe. The fire did not just warm them. It bound them. The hunt was the most dangerous task a Homo erectus could undertake. It required more than strength. It demanded strategy, silence, and luck. For millions of years, humans were prey, not predator. But the hunt was where that began to change. The savanna was wide. Open. Unforgiving. Antelope, boars, and even elephant calves roamed the grasses, but so did lions, hyenas, and giant saber-toothed cats. A single misstep meant becoming the hunted. And yet they hunted anyway. Not with bows. Not with traps. With persistence. Homo erectus had discovered a secret buried in their very bones: endurance. Unlike most mammals, they didn't need to pant to stay cool. Their bodies were made to run, long, steady, unrelenting. And so they chased. For hours. Sometimes a day. They tracked prey not to ambush it, but to wear it down. As the sun climbed and the heat grew unbearable, their prey would falter. Collapse. And then the kill. It was brutal. A pointed stick to the throat. A heavy stone to the skull. A sharpened flake across the neck. Blood soaked the earth. The tribe would gather quickly, not to feast, but to defend. Because death was a signal. Carrion birds circled above. Hyenas would follow the scent. Lions, too. The carcass belonged to whoever arrived first, or fought best. In that moment, a circle of death formed around the body. Humans dragging meat toward camp, jackals snarling at the edge, and always, the watchful eyes of something bigger in the tall grass. This danger forged bonds. Young ones stood back and watched how the elders moved, how they never turned their backs to the wind. How they left scraps far from camp to lure predators away. How they carried the liver and brain first, the most prized parts. The hunt was not just survival. It was a test. And each successful return fed more than bellies, it fed memory. What worked? What failed? Where the blood ran? Where it dried? They were not just killing to live. They were learning to conquer.